Hello again, everyone, for number 3 of our outstanding series by the great author and fellow climate co-host Henry Wang is with us. Henry, yay, you're here. Here we are
Hey,
talking
hi,
about.
Terry. Nice seeing you
I am
again.
well. I am well. Thank you very much. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this week we're talking about chapter 3 of his book, which is International Policy Developments on Climate Change. Henry, I'm going to pass that over to you so you can kind of give us an overview of what that looks like, and then we'll get into some discussion.
Okay. Well, nice talking to you again, Terry, on this very important subject. And this is really one of the most serious issue that is facing the Earth and challenging the human race. I mean, the UN have just issued a code red warning about climate change to the whole world, saying that over 33.3 billion people around the world will be affected by climate change. And they are warning that by 2027, the temperature rise, the global warming and temperature rise across the world will mean that we will have more than 1.5 degrees C of temperature rise across the world. And that is going to cause a lot of serious extreme climate-induced incidents, including severe storms, hurricanes, flooding in different parts of the world. So this is really, really very, very important. And many countries around the world are now starting to realize how important this is. That's why many governments are developing new policies and working together in the different meetings, international meetings across the world. And that's what this chapter 3 in the book is about. It's about the climate policies and international cooperations that are taking place by different countries across the world.
Right. Well, in your book, you briefly talk about the developments that are ongoing on COP24. It's really kind of out of date as we speak. But when you were writing the book a couple of years ago, it was still somewhat valid. Can you give us some highlights or some insights on COP24 again, maybe as a review, because we're going to hop into COP26 here in a moment.
Yeah, the COP24 was held in Poland in December 2018. And it's an important meeting where many countries around the world talked about what are the climate actions that are required. And it is an important prelude to the important COP26, which was then held in Glasgow in 2021.
Right. And since you're speaking of COP26, we talk a lot about COP26 in this series and its importance because it's really the relevant factor right now. So, you speak in this chapter about the pact in the deepening and acceleration of global climate actions. Maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, in COP26, over 200 countries attended this meeting, and they discussed different important aspects of climate change and climate actions. And in the end, they all got together and signed the Glasgow Climate Pact, together with a lot of important announcements on the different climate actions that different countries or different companies are going to do.
Okay.
Now, these important climate actions include important aspects on the forestry, important work on agreement on limiting methane around the world, and also very important on the agreement about international carbon market, and also important agreements about green finance. And we can discuss each of these.
Yes, and I think finance is another thing we're going to discuss here later. I think you're on point with the point about global fossil fuel discussions, and the fact that clean fuel helps, but it's not a future situation, and alternatives, they're eventually going to run out too. Lithium is a big deal. Everybody's loving the lithium battery, for instance. Well, when you use a lot of it and you mine a lot of it, you need to replace some of that. At least I'm reading recently where there's a lot more companies getting electronics and melting them down and repurposing a lot of the minerals that are the gold and different things that are in there. But we're talking about fossil fuel right now. So what type of a trade transition agreements from COP26 were valid in your opinion?
Yeah, they were very important discussions about fossil fuel and clean energy transition in COP26. And there was a lot of debates there was general agreement that countries, the 200 countries, need to accelerate green energy transition. That is, they need to replace the fossil fuel and replace it, phase out fossil fuel like oil and gas in transportation, in power generation, and replace it with clean, renewable energy like solar, wind, hydro in these aspects. And many countries are have already enacted clean energy policies. And in the last 10 years, the investment in renewable energy across the world has been tremendous. Over $1 trillion has been invested in the different renewable energy in solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, biomass in different countries across the world. But more needs to be done. And looking ahead, people expect that there will be more investments of like $200 million a year in clean energy required in different countries across the world. One very important aspect that they debated in COP26 was also the subsidy on the fossil fuel. Some countries are actually still providing subsidies for fossil fuel. And this is a very emotive topic. And they tried to there was a lot of debate whether they should ban that completely. But after a lot of debate, they agreed that they will strive to reduce this if possible, but they didn't get an agreement from all the countries to stop fossil fuel subsidies.
Absolutely. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's not all doom and gloom, because there are some smaller countries. Yes, they're smaller, but they've gone net zero. Okay, so it can be done, and perhaps this is a good point to bring up COP27 last winter in the end of 2022. And do you have any updates on that? I think that would be good to bring in at this point what you've heard from COP27 with regards to that.
Yeah, COP27 they work on. It was held in Egypt, and it was a successful meeting. A lot of countries attended, and they further debated different areas of actions that are required across the world on joint climate action. And really, the important thing is that they need to accelerate climate action, because I think it is now generally recognized, and the UN IPCC experts have highlighted that all the climate efforts that are currently being put forward will be insufficient to meet the 1.5 degrees sea temperature rise limit aspiration that is being advocated by UN IPCC. So these are likely to result in a temperature rise of about 2.7 degrees C by the end of the century. So more work needs to be done. And the COP28 that is going to be held in the UAE at the end of this year is going to be very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we've spoken about this already, and we're going to continue to speak about this through this whole series. 1.5 degrees Celsius doesn't sound like, well, that's just better swimming water. Well, that's the good news. The bad news is there won't be any ice on either of the poles, and pretty well all over the world. That means the coastal regions are going to suffer massively. Already in Indonesia, the water levels in Jakarta, for instance, is a good example where people who have nowhere to go are dealing with living in water 24/7. And that's just part of it, okay? We've already seen in the last 3 or 4 years the massive increase in severe weather. Cyclones and hurricanes are going to get worse, much worse, because the water temperature drives the intensity of these storms. And when the water's warmer, it draws more movement in evaporation, which causes winds, which build these mega storms. And severe drought, California on the west coast of the United States has been several years now, and the whole west of the United States have been in severe drought situations where firestorms, massive storms of flames covering many hectares of land at one time, fueled by the heat that it's generating to create a hurricane effect of these winds. And it's not just burning trees down and houses down now, it cremates them. They are gone. It is very, and it's going to be a long time before that gets reseeded and that stuff starts to grow again. So now this last winter, ladies and gentlemen, we had record snowfall, massive snowstorms out there that now everybody is starting to deal with flooding, because all of that water that's up on the tops of the mountains where everybody enjoyed their skiing is coming down, and it's coming down hard. And we haven't even started the spring rains yet. So there's a lot going on right now, and fossil fuel is, coin a pun, is fueling this. A lot of it is fossil fuel and the results of carbon emission and those kinds of things. And we're talking about, now I'd like to talk about climate finance. Well, where is the money coming for all of this? How are we going to do this? Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of money out there. It's just going to the wrong places. Henry, maybe you could talk a little bit about developing better financial solutions.
Yeah, I think this is an important area, and many governments and financial companies are recognizing that they have a very important role to play. Very, very good examples of this is in COP26. There was a lot of talk about the green climate funds, international green climate funds, and there was a lot of support from many countries. and they agree that they should try to double these and contribute more to these funds. But very importantly, on the private sector side, very encouraging aspect is 450 of some of the world's largest financial companies had got together and formed a green alliance and they all agreed they have up to about 130 trillion of financial asset under management. And they all agreed that they would follow the green green investment and ESG investment guidelines. And they will stop funding fossil projects and coal projects. I think this is going to be a very important start to a new chapter in energy investments and things like that. Because, as the UN have said, a lot of UN and the International Energy Authority and the work that I've done with G20 and the B20 task force across the world, a lot of the global warming and climate change is really resulting from the CO2 and greenhouse gases that has been generated from burning fossil fuel and from the industrial activities across the world. Therefore, this is, UN have just issued a new warning, a code red warning across the whole world, saying that their work is showing that 3.3 billion people across the world will be affected by climate change and the impacts of climate change. And this is a huge number. So this is important for all of us and all the countries around the world to really work together and action together on developing solutions and improvement actions to climate change.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I like saying this a lot, ladies and gentlemen, because it's valid about our discussions here with my co-host Henry Wang. I run a global international company. All right, I'm not an activist on the street with a sign, although I have done that. And Henry Wang has been director of major international organizations. We have a voice, and we see where the earth is going and what global issues are at stake right now. And we'd like you to just know that, yes, we are in the know about this. And it's all of our responsibility, whether it's at the top of the company or at the bottom of the company, it doesn't matter. Just because you don't have a board seat in the corporation that you're at, you can be an activist on behalf of climate change without rattling the cage of the corporation, but rather submit suggestions that will make your company and your corporation more sustainable and more green. Because let's face it, we're businessmen. Henry and I are both businessmen, and business is business. But once a business or an organization understands that green and climate change are good for business, you just evolve a little bit. You don't drive the same cars that you did 30 years ago. We certainly don't. And, there's involvement. There's a portable computer right there. 30 years ago, that didn't exist. My cell phone is every bit as powerful as the office computer. All of this has contributed, however, to the climate issues that we're doing. So it's you at every level of the corporation voicing suggestions to make your company better, greener, and leaving a better world for your children, your grandchildren, and for some of us, great-grandchildren, okay? Now, Henry, COP26 also continued the agreement of the Paris Accords and the Paris Agreement. Perhaps you can, the Paris Rule Book, perhaps you can speak a little bit about that, how that's transforming.
Yeah, they have made some significant progress in discussing the Paris Agreement, particularly in the rule book and also in the international carbon market, which is under Article 26 of the Paris Agreement. This is actually very important because this will allow now international carbon systems to be set up with carbon credits that will be able to be traded across the world. And some countries have already been actively supporting this. A good example, I think, is Norway's been supporting forests, which will generate a lot of carbon markets in Africa. Yeah, so they have. This will be an action that is good for the world, and also in the forest area. Many countries are now becoming to recognize that deforestation and land loss is a very serious problem. And over 103 countries have all signed agreements that they would actively work on stopping deforestation and stopping land loss due to various human activities, so as to restore some of the forests that we have lost over the last few decades. And this is good because, work by scientists across the world have shown that trees are really some of the best natural CO2 removing absorbers or removing agent that we have across the world. I mean, they absorb the CO2 from the atmosphere, and under photosynthesis, they then generate oxygen, which are required by all of us to live. And that's wonderful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you stepped into forest, which is the next thing I was going to talk about. It's forest and methane gas.
Yeah.
Methane gas, COP26 created a new deal with methane emission and creation. Perhaps you can talk a little bit about that towards the end of our show today.
Yeah, methane is really one of the very serious greenhouse gas, and it is actually much more potent than CO2 in terms of global warming. And this has been generated from industrial activities like refineries and other things. Is it also been generated from gas mining activities, because there's a lot of methane which is trapped in the earth as hydrates or trapped in the gas fields and things like that. So when we drill for gas or fragging and things like that, we release a lot of methane into the air. Another area where there's a lot of methane is from agricultural activities, especially generated by cows and things like this. Yeah, so this is becoming to recognize as one of the major issues now, methane gas around the world. And this is actually very happy to hear that, many countries around the world, including 30 of the biggest emitters of methane, has agreed that they will work together to reduce methane emissions around the world. And this will contribute significantly to reducing methane emissions and help to control global warming. And this is also where science is playing a significant role, because they have also fired into space a series of methane measuring satellites that are measuring where methanes are really being generated, and they can measure it very accurately from outer space where methane emissions are occurring, and so they are helping to police the activities of mining companies and oil and gas companies.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we talked a little bit about methane in the ground and in the soil and stuff like that. That's really not what we're talking about here. We're talking about meat production, pork plants, massive beef yards and things like that. They are responsible for a huge amount of methane release due to the droppings of the animals. And, those are the kinds of things that we get to make a change on. Okay. We're not telling you to stop eating meat. We are telling you to be more responsible when you're having discussions about methane gas and about what these emissions are. The Sustainable Development Goals are valid and they are fantastic. We're talking about number 16 of the group, but it's number 1 in our hearts, because if there is no planet B, the world peace, which is my other big baby, it doesn't exist if we wipe the human race off and most of the animal population off the face of the earth. Earth's not going to go anywhere. It's going to evolve like the dinosaurs. It's going to evolve into the next thing. There isn't any reason why this high-functioning, high-intelligent species that lives on this planet can't control what we're doing. And it's not about, well, I don't do anything. I drive my car and I keep it clean. I keep it tuned up, blah, blah, blah. Well, you're part of the problem. Okay? I'm part of the problem. I drive a car as well. The thing is, when I go to a conference where I drive, okay, I find out if there's anybody in the conference that lives near me, can we all drive together? Okay. Public transportation versus driving your car downtown in metropolitan areas, those kinds of things are coming to the fore. They're building, they're helping, but they're not fast enough. Okay. Big business, turning green is the next evolution of humankind. It's not big business going taken astray. I've already said in this series, 100 years ago, the livery stable went away. Okay, we evolved. The telephone. You're not locked to a wire on the wall anymore. Okay, we evolved. And right now, instead of the mindset and of purchasing those things that perpetuate carbon release is not the best idea. And there's a better way to do it. And some of you that are watching this live right now, or possibly even watching the recording, thank you both for doing so. There's more to it than that you can do. You have a good idea that can possibly affect climate change. Submit it. Look up on the computer or go to your library, for those of you who do that, and figure out who's the voice that you can send your idea to. Okay? There's a lot of youth out there right now that are coming up with amazing things that's going to help the earth. All right? Encourage them. All right? Every idea is worth thinking and reviewing. Henry, this has been another great talk on our series. Just happened to have the book. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for stepping in. Make some comments. Make some comments so that we can respond to them. Perhaps there's a side dialogue. Maybe you want to talk to us personally or in some regard. We thank you. Any final thoughts today, Henry?
It's been great discussion, and Terry, and this very important discussion on the book. And I think looking to the next talk, I think we're very excited to bring in a special guest, Vincent Law, who is actually working with us on child charity, but also on climate change and ESG area. So we look forward to having him as our guest on the next series, next installment, and talking to you all about this important topic about climate change. Thank you all.
Well, you heard it here. We have a guest next week, or next time, 2 weeks from now, and Vincent is quite an interesting man, and what he's doing in the world drew our interest, and we're really glad to have him aboard. That's it for this time, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your participation. Thanks for your time, for just stopping in and watching for a little bit, if not all of it. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Bye for now.
Bye.